Welcome to
Oh,
Deconstructing Patriarchy.
glad to be here. Glad to be here. Yes,
All right. So I have no idea. I'm still new to lives. But
I'm right there with you. Yep.
anywho, so those of you that are watching the replay, because I don't know that we'll get so many live people on. This is Daniel, and say your last name again for me so I know I'm pronouncing it.
You said it correctly below.
Blog.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
but beautiful. So Daniel Blog, I met Daniel over on Threads at the beginning of the year, and there was just something so genuine about what he was saying, and yeah, just about who he was saying. So we started to connect, and then when I was out in California back in April, I got a chance, or March, something time around there, we got a chance to talk and just connect a little bit deeper, and then we've continued the conversation since then. And I heard just with everything going on with male loneliness and how much I am putting my energy and attention on this, I figured, well, let's get a man who's actually doing the work on with us to have a conversation. And so Daniel came to mind for that. And here we are. We're having a conversation. So thank you for joining us again. Thank you for the viewers that are joining us. We are excited to be here. Just a couple notes up front. Both Daniel and I are what I call neurospicy. So we have there's a big chance we'll go off on tangents. So I do have a bit of a structure for us today of what I want to move through, but there's a chance that we go off on tangents. And I'm going to do my best to keep us on track and to keep us at an hour. If we find that we just have so much more to talk about, we'll have Daniel back and do another conversation. And just because I am a body-based person, I know I don't do a lot of that yet on my Substack and YouTube, but I am a body-based person. That's where I started everything really in. We're going to do a body check-in with Daniel and I, and then we're going to do a grounding exercise for everybody. So if you're listening, I just ask you to take a few, uncross your legs. If you're sitting in a chair, if you're driving, please don't stop and close your eyes. Keep driving. But just take a chance to close your eyes and just really feel into your body and what it feels like. So we're not looking necessarily for emotions, but for sensations in the body. So for me, I am feeling a little tightness in the chest, but yet I'm still able to get deep breaths. I'm feeling some pain in my lower back. Um, and there's just this little buzz in my chest as well with that tightness. So Daniel, how about you? What are you feeling in your body?
I'm feeling my heart pumping in a racy, kind of excited way. But that's normal.
Mhm.
I'm feeling some heaviness in my chest space, but also feeling a sense of strength on my lower back. I feel my back straight, and I got some cold fingers. That's what I'm feeling right now.
Awesome. All right. Well, let's just take that off.
Yeah.
Maybe get some circulation going and the cold fingers. So I wanted to also just invite in a grounding exercises for us to do because I know I've had tears today just as we're approaching June 14th and everything that means. And just some nerves, some excitement, some nerves, some anxiety. So I just felt like let's do a little bit of a grounding exercise. So I'm going to invite you just to find some place on your body to place your hands. It might be on your knees, it might be squeezing your thighs, it might be at your chest. Actually, this feels really good for me. So I'm going to put my hands here and we're going to take a deep breath in. We're going to do what's called a square breath, which is the same count in, the same count hold, the same count out, and then the same count hold again. So that space between the breath out and the breath in. So let's just start with 3 in, hold for 3, 3 out, hold for 3. Ready, set, breathe in, 2, 3, hold, 2, 3, and breathe out, 2, 3. Breathe in, 3, hold, 2, 3, and breathe out, 2, 3. Let's go for 4 now. So breathe in, 4, 3, 2, hold for 4, 3, 2, breathe out for 4, 3, 2, 1, hold 4, 3, 2. And I'm going to stop talking now. See if you can do this on your own for a second. Let's do one more. And then as you open your eyes, before you do, I always invite people to look downward so that the first point of contact you're seeing when you open your eyes is your own body. And then slowly lift your eyes back up to the camera, or if you're just listening to us, wherever you're listening to us. And thank you for joining us. If you didn't know what we're doing, we're just doing a little grounding exercise because I have a background in somatics and movements, and I love bringing that in when I can. So I feel better. How about you, Daniel?
I
You
feel a
felt good
lot more
before.
I feel a lot more grounded, so I
Good.
appreciate dropping into the process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. Even as a teacher of this, I forget sometimes to do my own work. So it's a good reminder. So if you're just joining us again, we're talking to Daniel Belog. He is a man that gets it, a man that understands that patriarchy, even though we might have slightly different definitions of patriarchy, which we're going to go over here in a second. But he gets that patriarchy is something that's hurting a lot of people, not just women, but also men. And we're going to talk about the male loneliness epidemic, which I don't know how you feel about that, Daniel, but I don't really necessarily call it an epidemic because it's not something you can catch like a virus. But I know not to dismiss the pain that I think men are facing right now, and even exasperated by men with platforms that are kind of getting there to name it, but they're not. I think they're doing more harm than good, which we're not going to get into it in a second. But anywho, ever since I found Deconstruct or a Creation of Patriarchy with Gerda Lerner, which is the book that I've used for season 1's foundation, I have said that until men, especially men at the top, the elite men and women at the top, really figure out that patriarchy is what's hurting them and harming them, that none of us are getting out of here. So that's something I will go to my grave, you know, preaching and telling everybody that the work that I'm doing is not about blaming men. It's actually about trying to bring us all together against the system of patriarchy. And the way that I define patriarchy is just that. It's just a system of ideologies that got built into our cultural DNA through our legislature, first and foremost. It started in the state and then trickled out to the stories, the myths, the creation stories, the religions over 2,500 years until it became, we didn't know anything different. That's all we see. It's the water we swim in. So a lot of people are like, patriarchy doesn't exist, which makes sense because they don't understand that that's what they're swimming in. They don't see the water that they're swimming in. It's just there. So the easiest definition, again, is just it's a system of ideologies that structures our social, economic, political, and religious homes, everything. It's like you can't separate patriarchy out from anything in our modern day culture at this point in time. Um, and then just on a flip side of that, because a lot of people will be like, well, patriarchy is bad, so then matriarchy must be good, right? No, that's actually more patriarchy. Patriarchy is it's just black and white. There's only two colors, right? Matriarchy, so pater means father and archy means to rule. So matriarchy is just the opposite of that. And it doesn't allow for the partnerships that we really, truly, I know Daniel and I are on that same page, desire. And so every time I hear somebody saying matriarchy, 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 and then they explain what they're trying to get at, it's like, no, that's actually not matriarchy. That's a matrifocal or a matrilineal. And partnership is what you're actually describing. And so matrifocal means that the tribe is focused on the mothers and so the children and the mother goes with her family instead of going to the father's family. That's all that matrifocal means. And matrilineal means that the tribe passes down through the family line passes down through the female line, not the father's line. And there's, we're not going to get into it now, but there's a lot of evidence that shows when fathers know who their kids are, that's what happens with patriarchy, and it's not necessarily always good for the tribe, that there's a lot of benefits for that paternal knowledge to not be known. Again, how do we get there? Who knows? That's what I'm preaching, though, is that matriarchy is not what we want. We want matrifocal, matrilineal, with the real focus on partnerships, which will create egalitarian societies. And that work is substantiated by Rain Eisler. Hold on, let me grab my books. I forgot to grab
Yeah,
those.
go for it.
And then I'm done with my intro.
This is
So
all.
just so you all know, if you've been watching along with me on YouTube or on Substack, Creation of Patriarchy is the book that is the foundation for season 1. And future seasons, we will get into Rain Eisler's work, which is partnership societies. So she makes a distinction, which I love, and I want to start using this language. You have dominator, which is patriarchy, matriarchy, are dominator type of society structures. And then you have partnership societies, which are going to be that matrifocal, matrilineal lineage that helps bring about that egalitarian. So
Yes.
those are my definitions.
Those are pretty solid. I
Yeah.
resonate with a lot of it, so I appreciate the introduction. Um, yeah.
All right. With that, now that we have kind of a clear, basis for how we're starting this conversation, what do you think, Daniel? And I think we've talked a little bit about this, but I'm really excited to hear all of your answers today. But what do you think it is that men are really? What is it that they're really lacking in their lives right now? And why? Let me go a little bit more clear on that. Why do they feel so lonely?
Mm. I believe men feel so lonely, and the male loneliness reality, rather than using epidemic, would say that men are disconnected from the essence of themselves. And when I say that, there are psychological layers of conditioning that is that we grow up into, and the systems that we're into, and um, some of the other impacts of that is how we are entrained to disconnect from our emotional bodies, and not just the language of emotional intelligence, but also the emotions, as well as the somatic connection to our bodies, and how we use that to relate to the emotions that we're naming. And so, um, because men are you know, do not have the environment or the the opportunity to explore these things, then what's happening is that there is a layer of communication or capacity to really understand each other from the deepest part of our human selves. And so, how do we recreate these connections to in ourselves as men, and how do we share this in intentional space, which is we'll talk about this, and men's work and being in men's circle, so we can create these containers for men to be able to practice vulnerability, emotional exploration, somatic awareness, and then begin to tap into these parts of ourselves which we have not initiated into because of the culture. And so, when I say initiation, these are parts about our griefs, our shame, the pain that men have been generationally holding on to. And what that does is that when we don't meet those aspects of ourselves as men, as males, um, then the behaviors that are the results of that come out in various ways, and many times violent, right? And what happens is that we as men feel lonely because we do not have ways to communicate to our bodies and connect to our bodies and our feelings and our emotions and the whole range of that, and to be able to connect with other men who are also working to connect with those parts of themselves. And I believe that to be one of the main things that we have to meet as men in order to kind of break away from this reality of male loneliness, if
Yeah.
that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a beautiful answer. So if I could just summarize this, and then I realized I totally forgot ADHD, to have you introduce yourself.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I just got excited to get into the conversation. So, well, let me follow up with this. Okay,
Sure.
summarize. In short, men are not allowed, or they're not finding ways to connect to their emotional somatic, and somatic, for those of you that don't know, just means of the body. So they're not connecting to their own bodies, their own emotions, their own feelings, their own psyche, and then they're not connecting to other men. And do you feel like, how do I want to word this?
Mhm.
So do you feel like all of these men that are blaming women for their loneliness, is that backwards? Because that seems backwards to what you just said, because it feels like the real loneliness is that they're not connecting to themselves, and they're not connecting to other men,
Mhm.
and that's the first point of where they need to start.
I believe that is the essential groundwork, because what happens is once they begin to connect to their emotional bodies, then they might have the opportunity to be able to relate to the women who are deeply connected to their emotional bodies. And so men will begin to have a lens to understand uh, uh, in some capacity what they're experiencing, but men have to bring back online what is their internal experience first. Otherwise, we'll continue to miss each other over and over again because we are disconnected from the essence of our human intelligences, right? So,
Well,
yeah.
that leads right into my next question. I mean, I think you just pretty much said it all.
Yeah,
We could
yeah.
probably just stop the interview right there.
Yep.
Men, if you're listening, like, here's a female that's willing to help by having another man that gets it online with us, telling us what he feels the connection is, or what the misconnection is between men and women. Daniel, for before we go further though, why don't you do like your, 3 to 5 minute little intro here of
For sure, for
where did
sure.
you start, and just with a focus of how did you wake up to really understand it was patriarchy that was shaming you out of your body connection, your emotions, out of connection with other men?
Yeah, you know what? My journey started maybe yeah, and I'll lead into that. Just I just want to
Mhm.
kind of set it up with kind of what where my background is and what I'm currently doing. So, I'm really someone who approaches things from also a decolonial lens, because I think there's a relationship between colonization and the patriarchy, right? And so I really push for remembering who we are and the cultures we come from, and the ancient wisdom that many of our cultures, where especially living in American culture, where we have disconnected from the essence of those knowledge systems that have really grounded us for millennia before things got out of tune, for lack of
Mhm.
better expression. But um, I'm Daniel, and I'm a Filipino American. I I'm a trauma informed hypnotherapist, as well as a men's group facilitator, integrating things like decolonial systemic perspectives, and also an exploration of emotional and spiritual healing work, regardless of what your spiritual beliefs are, right? And I'm also a writer, a truth seeker. Um, I'm really fascinated about healing the wounded masculine, right? And so to get to the bottom of that,
Mhm.
and without without falling into any binary failings, because it involves both the entire spectrum and how that all integrates. It's never either or, it's the whole thing. And so, um, I'm I would say I'm interested in psychology. I'm interested in mysticism. I'm down for activism, frontline work, but also the activism of the heart, which is just as important because it's got to start from the inside. And me, someone being who grew up from particular trauma where I have a sense of like experience of codependency or pleasing others. There was a lot of necessary internal work for me to like push through and work through that shame and grieve the old parts of me that had protected me growing up. And as those things fall away, then we get to feel better connected, because we have connected with those parts men have been avoiding for so long. And so
Mhm.
um uh and and uh and I was leading into how I got into this work. In 2019, I got into, I had been practicing hypnosis and NLP and working on one-on-one clients for both men and women. And my former wife at the time had been pushing me to like explore the patriarchy, the culture of
Mhm.
patriarchy, and I had some sense of that. But I had not dived into the intricacies and the complexities of like how this really permeates many aspects of life. If anything, like you said, it's like the air we breathe, that we don't know that we're swimming in it, right? And so how do
Mhm.
how do we pay attention to these unconscious realities and begin to bring it up into the conscious mind, bring it up into our awareness, so we can begin to identify and then name it and then start to tease out little by little, and so uh I started really learning about the patriarchy when I started getting into men's work in 2019. I joined my first one in Oakland, California. By the way, I'm from the Bay Area. And I got into specifically men of color work, because we as a man of color, um, we even though we have this privilege of being in a male body, there's still the complexities of
Yes.
various types of oppressions, because I'm not light or white skinned. And so um, you know it's kind of a challenging thing to navigate, because we and so being in men's groups allowed me to see that there were other men working on themselves, because I had this perspective that, oh my gosh, there's not so many men working on themselves. I feel like I'm the only one. And my heart opened up when I found these men in the men's groups. And then the pandemic happened in 2020. Um, I started getting more into men's work because everyone was home and in lockdown, and and the the Earth's immune system response was like, let's get online into Zoom and start to connect with others, right? Which,
What else do you do?
yeah, what else? And so that was a blessing. And so I went to men's groups every week.
Mhm.
And I started learning more about emotional dimensions in a very integrative and intentional way. Got into breath work for more of the healing opportunities to release things from our nervous system, that are pre-verbal, right? Because
Mhm.
sometimes you can't just will the conscious mind to move things, because things are just stored in the body, and we need certain modalities and approaches for us to really purge these things and
Mhm.
and and metabolize and feel them in our deepest sense. And so having being in these containers with other men, seeing them attempt to heal themselves or feel things, gave me the permission when I witnessed them to say, "Hey, I can do that too," right?
Mhm.
And here I go, continue to go to these spiritual warrior like workshops to kind of
Yeah.
feel into our hearts and feel into our bodies and to trust other men that they'll hold us. And it became a really beautiful community that I did not know that was necessary for my own healing, because a lot of my personal healing was just for myself,
Mhm.
not with another man. And I broke through the beauty of connecting with other men in these ways, and it was a really beautiful thing. And I realized that as I was attending these men's groups, that I had a natural propensity to lead men, as well as I
Mhm.
was going through my own personal journey of healing. And I started leading my own men's groups in the forest and online and in studios, and just meeting other men in a way that gives us the opportunity to get vulnerable, because that is we have to create these
Mhm.
spaces to give men the permission to really drop in to the grief and the pain and the shame
Yeah.
that we are all afraid of, right? Anyway,
Right.
keep going.
Well, I was gonna ask you, so you had your ex-wife mention patriarchy, and that
Mhm.
was kind of the first awareness, and that's one of my questions actually is, is it always have to be a woman behind the man
Right.
to mention patriarchy? Like, but let's not go there yet. But
Yeah.
how and then it seems like just being around other men giving you permission to feel and be in that vulnerability, which again, Brene Brown does so much work around that, and it's like vulnerability is actually a fucking strength, man. It is one of the biggest strengths you can have. But
100%.
but was there any other specific works that you found by men that are talking about how much the patriarchy shames them out of feeling their emotions? Shame, like I just read something, I think I sent it to you on Facebook.
Mm,
The guy, I don't think I sent you that comment, but one of the first comments on this guy who's doing work with men trying to help them heal their childhood trauma, the somatic side of it.
mhm.
And the first comment was, feelings are for females.
Mm,
And it was just like, oh, where? I mean, I know where. I mean, it's just, again, in the cultural DNA. So my question is, though, Holly, bringing it back in, where else besides your ex-wife and just kind of seeing the permission, did you start to unpack how patriarchy, the system, was limiting you and keeping you small in so many ways and keeping you disconnected from yourself? Was there anything else that you can think of?
mm. No, my former wife created the opening, and so when I began to research and study the patriarchy, then I had some context as to what was my previous experiences. Like, I just looked at my entire timeline from childhood into adulthood, and then I would see it in my father, and in my grandfather and my uncles, and I realized that I didn't have the modeling
Yeah.
of conscious men. And so I understand that, um, that also informed me or strengthened me to, like, oh my goodness, this is definitely generational, and how does this end with me?
But
Anyway.
what were the things that you turned to study? That's what I'm asking, like.
That's what did I turn to?
Mhm.
I read the Goethe learn
You did read
learn
that book?
Yes, and I need to read it again, because I read that a few years ago, but I think my perspective,
Yeah.
just because I've grounded myself in my own experience, I think a lot of that will be
Yeah.
colored a lot more and relatable if
Yeah. I do
yeah.
plan on doing a book study, a book club with that, and we'll probably go page by page because it's so
Yeah,
meaty.
yeah,
I just don't know how to format it. But
for
okay, so
sure.
you found Creation of Patriarchy, which is
Yeah. The
phenomenal.
the the second resource that I think is essential for all men is Bell Hook's work
Oh, yeah.
of course the what is it um
I don't even I'm not that
the will to change,
the will to
men,
change.
masculinity, and love. And so, I think it's a beautiful and really challenging book for men and women alike, and just humanity, I think, should read it just so we can get grounded in a kind of collective understanding together.
Okay.
But it really introduced me to the different layers of how patriarchy shows up in the home and in
Yeah.
society and in ourselves. Yeah.
Did you have any resistance when your ex-wife first mentioned patriarchy?
Absolutely. I'm not gonna lie as a man because
Yeah.
that is how conditioning works,
Yep.
right? And so,
Yeah.
I had to be really honest with myself and really drop my guard, as difficult as it was. And I believe most, if not all, men will be challenged with that truth that they will have to meet.
What do you think about,
Mm,
because there's all words that trigger us, right?
mhm,
So
mhm,
what is it about the word for you and maybe even collectively, so two separate answers for men with that word patriarchy? Do you Is there
mm.
an assumption you jump straight to that you probably
You
don't
know
still do it, but did you?
You know what? I would say that the definition, I mean, the not the definition, but the term patriarchy, it just wasn't in my consciousness to even react at the
Okay.
time. And what that informed me is how many more men are out there that are unbeknown to this reality. And I think understanding the word patriarchy and the umbrella of the patriarchy is just such an important study to frame the experiences that we're going through individually and in society and the whole world, if anything. Yeah, that was my experience, surprisingly.
That's interesting. So it almost seems like my analogy of it's just the water we swim in, so you can't even see it. Like
Yes.
how and I don't, besides doing the work I do to expose it and to keep refuting people when they show up and, say that I have a fever dream
Mm,
or I'm just a cat lady or, there is no patriarchy, just to continue to be a broken record. I'm not shaming men. This is about the ideology that's built into our culture. How do you get people to wake up to see the water and the air? How do you get them to
yeah.
see that this is just a lens that we've put on our experience, but
Mm,
it's not the only lens. If
yeah.
we allow ourselves to take that off, I use that word all the time as lens. Like what I'm teaching people to do is to see the lens of patriarchy first and foremost, to make it visible for them to see
Mm,
so that they can therefore take it off and pick up a different lens, right? Like it'd be great if we didn't have any lens, but I think as humans
right,
we'll probably always have a lens. So do
right.
you have any, because you've done men's work now for, 5 years,
Mhm,
have you seen, I'm I'm hoping you're gonna say yes, that you've had aha moments with some men where they get it and they
mhm,
see, maybe they're not naming it patriarchy, but they're understanding how severed they've been from their emotional body.
right,
And is
right.
there anything that you can pinpoint to say, like, this is what helped them wake up?
Mm, mm. To be honest, saying the word patriarchy, it creates an immediate resistance, you know?
Mhm.
And I've been having to explore this because of that initial resistance. Then many of the men that I would hope to attract into these spaces may not even come into it. And
Mhm.
so I kind of have to be a little stealthy
Yeah.
and have them and give them the tools to explore and meet how the patriarchy functions, but I'm not going to name it, and how
Mhm.
it impacts them internally and their relationships and the way they relate to themselves. And so it's kind of an art form. and an intuitive way of approaching it because it's so delicate,
Yeah.
especially men being so easily resistant. So there's some play there, and as important as it is, I say I would, at least how I'm doing my work, even though I name the patriarchy, I don't actively say the patriarchy in our work, but we work with the things that transform, that begin to have the patriarchal structure within them begin to wither away, right?
Yeah.
Without naming it, but at the same time they are healing it, and then we add in the contextual, historical, head based stuff, through learning about, the book that you mentioned, and Bell Hook's book as well, and other resources that men might be open to. But I would say those would be the two most important ones that I would start them off with, because in the end, this the deconstructing patriarchy, it's just the beginning
Yeah.
of a long ride, right?
Yep.
I
Yep.
would say it's taken me five, at least 5 to 6 years to really get to the root of things, and
Okay.
the journey is it. We need other men to move us through that journey. It's
Yeah.
not something. It's never a switch and like, aha, this is how I'm going to approach it. It's continuous, rigorous, honest work,
Yeah.
and yeah, men need other men for
So
that
let
kind
me
of support.
ask you
Yeah,
this. Yeah, yeah. I mean,
Mm.
women need other women, and
Of
and
course, of
that's
course.
that's why I wanted to bring that question out right up front and be like, okay, y'all, it is not women. Again, I've said this so many times now on social media. Women didn't create the male loneliness situation, and we're not to blame for it, and we're not going to actually solve it. It is a man's work that he has to do to solve that for himself. And that's why I wanted to bring that question out, because when I was listening to you in another podcast earlier this week, it became really evident to me that it's not even that men are so lonely because women aren't connecting with them. It's they're so lonely because they're not connecting first to themselves and to other men. And then there's there's only so much a female to a man can give, because we're different creatures essentially, right? We have
Mhm, mhm.
a different lived experience where men need other men. So I love that. And have you found, cuz my mind was going a million different directions, of course, with again, I am huge into language, as I shared with Daniel. Like, I was voice texting him as I was listening to his other podcast earlier this week, and I used to use very polarity based language, feminine, masculine. And I've kind of started to get away from that, because I do find that, especially being in more of the mainstream world I am, versus years ago, I was more in the hippy dippy new age world where that was really popular. It does deter people, especially men, when you start talking about emotions being feminine. Um, and now my whole thing, and I have a point to all this, so bear with me, but like, emotions are sentient being things for this earth, right? Like, I keep talking about this documentary I watched called My Octopus Teacher, where you could tell it might be very like minimal, but this octopus had emotions. It had feelings, right? It got scared and it ran away. I mean, that's just a natural reaction to energies in motion. That's what I call emotions. That's all they are. They're energies in motion. They're energy coming into us, and we either need to integrate it and let it go, or shake it off, right? Like, that's what I teach in my somatic work. So along that line, if I'm a female wanting to reach men about patriarchy, what are some other, maybe more succinct words or phrases I could potentially use to talk about it without having to name patriarchy, so maybe I would actually not scare them off?
Mm,
Even though my whole business, I mean, this isn't for me, this is for other people, because my whole business
well,
is
I would
arguing.
say there's no easy answer for this, and when I say that,
Mhm.
men need to meet their resistance, because that whatever is being told to them is the truth. And if men can't even meet that truth, then we have work to do. That's the opening. And so, yes, they may feel resistance, they may feel shame, but that's the opportunity to meet that. And
Daniel,
it's
and I
not.
just got the chills because instead of putting it on women, which I was just trying to do,
Mhm.
you put it back on men. So thank you.
Yeah,
That was a
yeah.
test that I didn't even know you were having. But that's what I'm hoping men get is like you are so empowered as men in this day and age because when you start to blame somebody else for your issues, you have no power, right? Like you've just put yourself in the child. So you have a parent relationship and a child relationship.
Mhm.
And when you start to blame somebody else, you therefore put them in the parent and you in the child, and
Yeah.
you're a victim. You cannot rise up and be an equal with that person. So if they're blaming women, you're making us super powerful, but we don't have the power. So now it's like this is maybe the disconnect. So let's circle back around to that. Like, because and I'm gonna say this, rightly so, women are pissed. Women are they're not even pissed anymore. They're just fed up. They're done. There's the 4B movement. Have you heard of that?
No, I have not.
So the 4B movement comes out of Korea, I believe, South Korea, where women have just decided that they're not going to partner, they're not going to have kids, they're not going to be the unpaid labor behind the scene anymore for men. They're not marrying. And so, and I'm tuned into a couple of the younger women who, and I apologize for this, but they're calling men parasites because there's studies out there that still show, women are still doing two to two and a half more times of unpaid labor at home when it's a family, so and they're still working full time. And a lot of times they're the breadwinners now. So it's like even tripled their stress level. And so a lot of women, and I'm there, I'm frustrated, right? Like I don't even date because I'm just not even interested in most of the men I meet because they're not connecting to themselves. There's nothing for me to connect to. There's no depth
Mhm,
for me to go anywhere with them, right?
mhm.
And I don't stay in that camp. Like, I want to say rightly so. These women have every right to be pissed and do what they're doing. But I also understand that if we want to move forward, we have to find a bridge, right? And unfortunately, or fortunately, I don't know, like, does that land on women? Because women have been doing so much unpaid emotional labor, both unpaid labor and physical and emotional labor for our society at large.
Mhm, mhm.
Um, so let me feel into this question. So like, yeah, where do you feel like the disconnect is there? Because you're a man that's standing in the middle with me, right? You see both sides. Um, I don't know if we want to go all the way to the red pill movement and what men are seeing and being exposed to in the the red pill movement with all the
Yeah.
alpha bro. Yeah.
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah. I don't even know where to go with that question. It's just a loaded question, right? Like, where is the disconnect
Mm, mm.
between these two sides?
These are very important, so, like, give me a few moments to
Yeah,
gather my thoughts so I can
absolutely.
answer clearly, and this is an example of men need to slow down and before they answer, because we're so heady, we're so intellectual, and we just wanna say the right answer as if we wanna fix things, rather than just be in the reality of what before the truth emerges. Okay.
Right.
I've come across and met women who have this energy that they're fed up with men, and I don't deny that reality. It's so true, and they're but and I'm also saying this is coming from a wound, right? And
Mhm.
their own capacity and truth to disregard or decenter men is necessary so they can have the container to heal because it's already been so much for them.
Mhm.
And in and and to add on to that, I also believe because this is the wounded feminine that there is also and I'm saying their attachment to the wounded masculine is also impacting their opportunity as a bridge to reconnect with men, especially the
Mhm.
ones who are working with themselves. I I hate the term all men because that absolutist language is so black and white, and that is essentially a programming in our minds that the solution is either or. But the bridge is, how do we find a way to reconnect in a collaborative
Mhm.
journey that will inevitably have to take. I know we're not at that juncture. There's just so much shit going down right now
Yeah.
in the state of the world, and I feel it like deep in my bones, and my heart aches so much that I have to stay away from social media because I understand what's going on, but I I, I I have a hard time carrying it, as do
Yeah.
women and their feelers, and I would say I'm a feeler too, that I have reconnected with my own body, so I get it. And for men, for the ones who are working on themselves, dismantling or deconstructing the 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 psychological systemic aspects of the patriarchy within them, um, um, need to understand and see the women and understand their vantage point as well, and to not force them to feel differently.
Yeah.
We have to give them the space for them to heal, for them to feel their pain, for them to really be in their sorrow, and men have to do their work, because at some point we're gonna meet in the middle and find a way to build this bridge, in my
Yeah.
opinion. Yeah.
Yeah. So many thoughts again. Um, thank you for that.
Yeah.
The absolutist language, I think, is I took a note of that because I think that that is, it's a pendulum, right? I think
Yeah.
women might need time to go to that absolute language and hopefully realize we can't stay there and come back around as they do the work. I think is like, if I could speak for females, one of the things
Mhm.
I feel really frustrated about is, you know, whether it be on the personal level, the communal level, or the societal level, I think women are just so tired of trying to speak out and not being heard, which I know you get. But it's not just that. I think it's also, as I've woken up to my white privilege, which I was very resistant to because I don't have a typical white life, even though I'm in a white body. But I understand that that white still gives me some privilege, when I'm out about in the world. Maybe that's all the privilege I have with the white body. But my whole point with that is there is that reckoning one person has to do with, what their race and what their gender has perpetuated onto other people, right? And I think what women, and I don't know that I've asked men to do this, but like imagine waking up, and I know I've heard men say this, so again, not all men, but like every day, like I have to take, when I'm going downtown into any major city, I have to take my safety into consideration, right?
True, it's true.
When I'm going on a date, I've got to take my safety into I
Yes.
mean,
Yes.
I'll just get so blunt as saying, I had a summer of fun a couple summers ago, and what I learned for me as a female is that it wasn't about connection with a man. I needed to know I was gonna feel safe before I went and had sex with him. That was it. Like, I need the connection for safety, not for connection's sake, right?
Mhm, mhm.
Um, Another thing that, like, I'm gonna do a reaction to this part of Matthew Hussey's video. I think I
Yeah.
sent it to you, where he really gets on women for having a double standard of who pays now for dates because women are earning just as much as men, or because women are still being, what's the word? I don't remember the word he used, but there's a word where women continue to still marry up in the social chain because of finances, where we're still, earning maybe more, and so we're being choosier. And I'm like, but he doesn't get this. Women still have 2 to 2.5 times more unpaid labor that they have to do at home. They still are doing more of the emotional labor of a relationship. And it's, and there's a passage in here. Let me just read it really quick.
Yeah.
And Gerda, so this is the last chapter. It's actually called The Creation of Patriarchy. She says, it should be noted that when we speak of relative improvements in the status of women in a given society, this frequently means only that we are seeing improvements to the degree in which their situation affords them opportunities to exert some leverage within the system of patriarchy.
Mhm.
And since the system of patriarchy is not set up to be equitable,
Mhm.
it's never going to be equitable. And this is a conversation I want to get into with Larissa, who does the female body politic. Like, I don't think we can stay within our Constitution because our Constitution was never set up to be equal for you and me,
Mhm.
right? So, like, you've got to come up with a new system. But she goes on to say, some people call this women's freedom, but it's just illusory. It's not true. It's not right. And Matthew Hussey saying that we're being too choosy is not taking into consideration the fact that we still do more of the unpaid emotional and physical labor of a relationship. So yeah, I do want a man that's going to earn more than me because I'm most likely going to lose my job or take half time off and not be compensated for it, right? And I have to take that into consideration. So I just wanted to say that I think if there's anything, I don't know, I haven't heard from anybody else, but that's one of the things I think taking back to men is like, we need to know that we're seen and heard on that, right? Because I think that that's where a lot of, if I think about it, that's where a lot of the women are spending time is just in the inequity that's still built into the system because it's the system. It's not men, it's the system that they won't see that's making us feel like we don't want to connect with them because they're not willing to connect and
Yeah.
see the system.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, that does make sense. And I believe there is a relationship with men's own psychological knowing. If they have that structure of the patriarchy within their psychology, then changing the system to be different, to make it equitable for all, will won't match their psychological makeup, and so there's gonna be a resistance. That's why I say in
Mhm.
the end of it all, in the what men need is to change from within themselves,
Yeah.
and then what spills out of that is the systems will begin to change because men are starting to understand that the system was created because of their own ways to not be able to relate to themselves and the world at large and women and nature and the planet, you know?
Yeah.
And so the source of the system is the disconnect in men internally.
Yeah.
And it's
So that
something.
goes
Yeah,
right back to what we started the conversation
exactly.
at, which is perfect because we're almost about to wrap up,
Yeah, yeah,
which is I started off saying until men realize it's the system of patriarchy that's harming them and do that work to dismantle. I mean, that's where I start everybody is like,
mhm,
I'm not talking about dismantling our social structures at this point because not enough of us have not enough of us have deconstructed the internal ideology.
yeah,
When it's kind of, this slow moving force at
yeah.
first, but then as more of us do this, more of us do the work and more of us face our own triggers and our own
Shadows.
shadows and
Mhm,
resistance. That's the word I was looking
mhm,
for.
yeah,
Resistance to not the words, but the meaning behind the words, right? Then
mhm,
we'll be able to start to make the collective change. But that's also where, my fiction, just to plug my fiction work, that's where, my fiction work is coming in, where I'm creating new creation stories that, help kind of predate the old creation stories. Cause that's what we have to do. I mean, stories are the foundation of the universe. They're the foundation of our
yeah,
minds, the
mhm,
foundation of everything. So, let me do you have anything else burning that you feel as we wrap up here? Is
Maybe we can save it for another conversation, because I know we have a few minutes left, and
Yeah.
once you get me started on a topic, I'm not gonna shut up.
Okay. Do you have a burning question though? I'll take a note and we'll save it for next time.
Yeah, yeah. I think I really and this has been a recent juncture for the last like 6 months, and it's really, really diving into feminine and masculine polarity. And when I say that, not even gender based, just energetically,
Mhm.
what does that mean? And I think it's really important lens and self understanding to how those energies operate within us, because we embody energetically both those aspects. And so how do we as humans understand those dynamics and begin to integrate that, and be able to communicate and understand where is the depolarization happening and where is the polarization happening. And I think that understanding will help us move through these challenges that men and women are experiencing.
So, again, I'm gonna challenge both of us, though, instead of naming it feminine and masculine, because I think that's where, men get
Yeah. I'm
hung
sorry,
up.
yeah. Yeah, no, totally, and this is where language is so tricky, but then when we look at the universal historical, frameworks of duality, then we're talking about the yin and the yang,
Which I think
the animus,
yeah.
right? And
Let's just
essentially, that's what we're aiming for, so,
okay.
things can get easily lost with feminine, masculine, because it's so tied to gender, like, in our subconscious, that we can't even, like, untangle from that, and so
Yeah,
we need additional language to kind of like lay it all out that they're all related, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
And that's where, I do the only spiritual practice I allow myself to have at this point in time, not allow, but just that I enjoy having, I will reframe that, is, astrology.
Yeah.
Because when you really get into astrology, it's science and art, so it's that yin and yang,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And the whole idea of astrology is that you have the polar opposites, right? Like Leo, and what's the polar opposite? Like Capricorn. And in astrology, the goal is to become balance between those two different
Balance.
types of energies,
Balance.
right? So
Yeah.
I do think that there is a lot of truth to that. I think we just need to schedule a time where we can do a live on YouTube and go hours and talk about,
For
just
sure.
have like our dinner and popcorn and ready to go and like just sit down
Totally
and
down for it. Totally down for it.
yeah, because I think these conversations, because I think we actually covered a good majority. We have a couple more minutes. So because I'm a female and I am wired by patriarchy, and I'm identifying this as still patriarchy, it could be because I have 2 boys that are now young
Mm.
men and I know have been, because they're in the Christian community, probably exposed to red pill movements. Um, and because I am a sentient being that loves to help people. This is even though I have frustrations of doing more work than, men, not all men, but some men
Yes.
in this
A lot of
world,
them.
and I've done tons of unpaid labor, and I'm still, I was a stay-at-home mom, still trying to get on my feet 15 years after my divorce, 13 years, no, 14 years after my divorce. Um, w I don't want to put a responsibility on women, but if there is something women could do to stop being the emotional labor, because I think when you be that emotional labor women, we stand in the place of men having to feel their feelings, right? Like we kind of stand in the middle and block them from having to face their feelings. So, is there a parting word that you could share to women that would help them understand what they're limiting their men from being able to feel, or how they could help the men in their lives by stopping that emotional labor for their men?
Yeah, yeah.
I know that's a huge question.
No, it's a huge question, and what's coming up for me intuitively and naturally from my heart right now is that, yes, they can name the truth that women are taking on the emotional labor and putting it on men, and I totally get that, and because men haven't met their own internal shame, men actually need some space to have an opportunity to feel
Mhm,
that shame. And when women keep, you know, saying the truth to men, men are just they're gonna collapse into their shame every single time. And
mhm,
it's a very hard dance, but I believe men need the space away from women, and I really think it's necessary for women to decenter men in the way that
mhm.
so men have the opportunity to, that's why they're feeling lonely, because now they have to meet themselves. They have to meet themselves. There's just
Yeah,
no other way, you know?
right? It's kind of beautiful. I mean,
Yeah,
I heard one of the TikTokers I follow today, and I just invited her in for an interview as well, talk about how, oh my God, I just lost my train of thought. Decentering men, um, it's gone. That thought is
yeah,
gone.
yeah.
But it had to do with decentering men. Like there's a lot of language. Oh no, evolution. And I knew this, right?
Evolution.
Like there's a book I listened to last year called Eve, and it's the evolution through the female body because evolution drives female bodies drive evolution. Out of every species, it's always the females that are driving evolution. And so women are actually, so I just kind of want to reiterate what I was feeling and that you've substantiated with your knowledge is that women are doing what we need to do, which is pull
Yeah.
away, don't partner, don't don't stand in the gap. Let men right now feel their isolation, let them feel their pain, and hopefully men like Daniel will continue to grow his business and get his word out there. I'll be here to support that. And that's another reason I wanted to meet Daniel because I knew I'd run into men that I would be able to refer to Daniel. So if you have men in your life, please refer him to Daniel and his men's groups. They are active at the moment, right? You do online and in person in the Bay Area.
Every 3 weeks, I have a men's group that I run
Yeah.
every Wednesday, and I also do one-on-ones as well. Yeah.
Okay. And I think that that's beautiful because it doesn't have to be every week. Sometimes that's the masculine, the toxic masculinity, the toxic patriarchy we've been in. It's like, you gotta do, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Every 3 weeks. What a beautiful rhythm that you don't have to even be on, a 2 week or once a month. Every
yeah.
3 weeks, let the integration happen. Let all the growth happens in the pregnant void and the
Mhm,
muck,
mhm.
right?
The
It doesn't
muck.
necessarily happen when you keep pushing, um, and keep lifting those weights. You gotta take a day off, and then that's when
Right,
the growth of
right.
the muscle happens. So beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay, we are at 3:02, so let's go ahead and wrap it up. Daniel, one more time, how can people find you and find your work? I'll make sure to link it whenever I share these videos.
Absolutely. No, I appreciate the time and space that you're sharing to share my work through your platform. And people can find me on Instagram, Discover Being, as well as on Threads. And then you can also find my website at discoverbeing.org.
Bean dot, or I'm just gonna put it in the comments.
Yeah.
Awesome. I think I got it right.
You did get it
Did
correct.
I?
Yes.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Sometimes big thumb syndrome. All
Yeah.
right. So thank you to the few people that joined us live. If you're watching the recap of this, that's what it's here for. It's for you to dive into these conversations deeper. We will have this up on YouTube at some point. And if you haven't checked out the first season of Deconstructing Patriarchy, where we do week by week by week have a lesson plan we're building on to learn the ideologies that built the system so we can clearly see it. And I feel like my internet's going bye bye. And how to break it down and what we're going to put in the place of that, right? So the next few seasons, season 2 is in the works already. It's in my head, and I've kind of done a little mapping. We're going to talk about a lot about the goddesses and the feminine divine that even biblical scholars and other historians I find are still getting. They're not getting it wrong, but they're missing this
Mhm.
piece, right? So I have that lens. And then season 3, we're going to get into cognitive biases and the toxic self-help world. And we're just going to keep going from there. So again, this is meant to be transformational education, not just education that goes in one ear and out the other. And oh, that's nice. No, it's meant to get into your psyche and help you transform your life. We'll be doing more lives like this. We have one on Monday at 2 p.m. with Larissa Reinhardt of the Female Body Politic. We'll be going deep into female history. Yeah, my internet is
I
getting a
hear
little
you. I
funky.
hear you.
Can
Yep.
you hear me? Okay.
Mhm.
Anyways, and then I have some more set up for the rest of the summer. And yeah, we're just going to continue to try to grow this community on the lives now because interacting like this is where my sweet spot is. Thank you, Daniel, for being my first interview. This felt amazing, and I am excited to keep going now.
I really appreciate your work, Holly. Thank you for breaking it down from an educational point of view as well. And I think it's a necessary it's a necessary learning, and so it adds to the body of knowledge and the embodied knowledge that we're all going to be needing moving forward as we transition into a new world.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, Daniel, be safe out there in California this weekend,
Thank
especially
you.
since you're going anywhere tomorrow. All right,
You
so
take
much
care,
love,
Ollie.
y'all. Thanks,
Much
you
love.
too.
Bye.
Bye. Much love.